the Awaken Your Ego podcast with Joanne and Ariana. We are a health podcast that explores topics to do with biohacking and self-discovery.
We are also on the self-discovery journey, and we want to attract listeners that are doing the same in order to help them realize they're not alone.
Ego differs from conventional medical spas and wellness centers. We believe that the secret to maximizing one's sense of self is in addressing the entire person, inside and out. We provide state-of-the-art aesthetic treatments as well as lifestyle management and holistic health solutions. We aim to please with our efficient and friendly customer service and guarantee with our scientifically proven alternative therapies and lifestyle optimizations that every patient will leave our care with a boosted ego. Our goal is to help our patients realize the necessity of self-care and to encourage them to prioritize their health and wellness goals. When we make self-care and confidence a priority, then we're able to bring to light our potential for happiness and growth. This podcast is a way to expand our reach so that we are able to spread the word on the importance of self, the whole self, inside and out.
This podcast is for educational purposes only. Please reach out to your medical provider if you have questions about any of the treatments we discuss to see if it's a right fit for you. Now on to our show. Hi everyone, and welcome to our next episode of Awaken Your Ego. Today we have Rachel Hernandez joining us. Rachel is first generation and raised in Stanislaus County. During junior college, she joined a political science group where she was inspired by the ways of civic engagement and communication, or the lack of it, impacts communities. She went on to earn her Bachelors in Political Science, spending her last year at the state capitol in the legislative intern. She then went on to earn her Master's in Public Administration, which focused on Central Valley nonprofits and local government. During her academic years, she worked on federal, state, and local campaigns to build grassroots power in POC communities and in nonprofits serving a range of populations from survivors of domestic violence, federally qualified health centers, AANHPI communities, and others. In 2020, she ran for City Council in Riverbank, where she currently serves. So let's welcome Rachel.
Thank you. It's always still really weird to hear like all these things. Even when you asked me to write a bio, I was like, oh my gosh, like
Feels a little awkward,
yes.
huh? Well, before we get started, we kind of wanted to break the ice and ask you some rapid fire questions. So the goal is to answer as quickly as possible, first thing that comes to your mind, okay?
Right. Don't think too hard.
You got the timer, Bren?
We're gonna get the timer for 1 minute.
Oh.
It's hard. It's hard out here.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay.
Action.
What has been your favorite age so far?
Oh my gosh. I'd have to say like right when I turned 30. I was
Nice.
like pivoting from 20s to 30s. It was different.
Yeah, for sure. What is your go-to lazy dinner?
Oh, eggs. Anything with eggs, like eggs and toast.
Oh, I feel that. What's your favorite thing to do in the summertime?
I mean, I guess hang out with friends. But like mooch off everyone else's pools and go swimming.
Pool hopping?
Yeah.
What's one of your nicknames?
Rach. I don't have nicknames. I don't know what it is about me. I'm like, it's either Rachel or Rach.
Is your bed made right now?
No. Oh my God.
If you could afford any car, which one would you drive?
It's public transit, trains. We'll talk about that more.
Perfect. What's the last craft you made?
I made a vision board.
Nice.
Time's up.
Ding, ding, ding. That was good. These ones are a little bit more intense. My
I
little listening, I was like, okay, these are deep. Let's just
Exposed. My bed is not made right now.
It's like causes guilt and shame to happen.
That's a good way to start.
Okay, so could you explain to us what you do as city council?
Yes. So we're basically the managers of the city. So, I mean, with anything, like you look at budgets, you look at staff, you look at the direction of the city. You could apply it really to like nonprofits and businesses, and but you do it as a group. So there's 4 council members and the mayor. We get together twice a month, and that's really where the decisions happen of, this is our budget. This last meeting, we just approved the budget, and one of which was like $6 million that came from the federal government to each city. And we start to figure out like what we're going to do with it, what direction we want the city to go in, what we really see for the city, and trying to decide that together is the hard part, with different mindsets going on. But I think I'm pretty lucky that I got a good council with Riverbank. So it's really just like applying my mind to what I envision the city to look like in every aspect of the city, trying to be inclusive of, where we're at here in like this part of Riverbank or over by Crossroads area that's a little more affluent, so you have different considerations to take in. It's the easiest way to put it. Mm-hmm. So, we pay attention to the more like nuanced things like sewage and garbage and like the roads, but then to big things about, this, how we work with the school district and, how we want to involve youth and just parks and rec in general, how we want to involve the community. So it's pretty exciting. I'm excited about it. And I always have to tell people, it's like someone has to be interested in it. So I love talking to you both about it.
Yeah, exactly.
No, that's fantastic. So you guys definitely have a huge role with the mayor, obviously figuring out where all those funds are going. That's awesome.
Mm-hmm. Where did your passion for community come from?
I think you mentioned a little bit, in the intro where, especially as women and women of color and being younger, like we go through very specific things, different than, our counterparts. And so I guess I was like growing up thinking about that and like how just I lacked control. And it was very personal to me. Like, I lacked control in so much of my life. And to be honest with like traumas and things like that when I started getting into junior college and I realized like, oh my gosh, like, little things is like voting, like we have some power in that. And then on top of that, realizing like, okay, when I look at our leadership, like they look nothing like us. So I'm like, we have to get involved. And I describe myself as very introverted. So even like this, I'm so comfortable with you both, but I'm like a little nervous, And so, but it's bigger than me. And so I think about that and like wanting to involve other people and wanting to at least inspire other people. It's like, come take my place. Like I can't be the only one doing this. So just realizing like how much power we do have, and all that's going on in the world.
Mm-hmm. Oh, that's awesome. When did you originally decide to take a more active role in engaging in clubs, organizations? Like when was that point where you're like, hey, I can affect change. I can do this. Was it college? Was it before that? Was it after? It
was honestly like after or during. So junior college, I was inspired by a friend. Like a friend told me like, come to this club. And I was like, okay, like I'm not involved. I just want to go to school and go home. But, I went to the club and it was a bunch of younger people, like hosting meetings and like deciding what they wanted to do at the school, like on a really small level. But I was like, okay, like maybe this is a good introduction to get involved and to do something, make some friends even. And so it was little things like that. And then realizing that like how exciting it was, to when people were, excited for you. That support is just the biggest thing, I think, to get through that. Mm-hmm. So you start building like that support network and all of it. And it just felt right to be involved. Mm-hmm. And then from there, through the different college experiences and just how I think from internally wanting to get involved and then externally everyone saying like, your voice is needed, was encouraging. So kept doing it. I'm still here. So
oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Well, and I know you're involved in some nonprofits. What nonprofits are you currently working on?
So City Council, I think a lot of people don't realize City Council sometimes is not full-time. So with smaller cities, especially Riverbank's about 26,000 people. We get paid $300 a month to do the work. And so it turns out to be pretty volunteer work. Mm-hmm. And so full-time, I work for a nonprofit that does voter education in communities of color. So I'm their director of communications and narrative. And there I was really purposeful about wanting to intersect the work I do in the community and the work that I do in nonprofits. So I'm not getting pulled in different ways, you know? A little bit before we were talking about self-care and caring for, you know, your inside first. And I realized like, I love this work and I want to keep doing it, but how am I not going to get burned out? And it really was trying to find those like intersections of work full time and then, you know, after hours, the nonprofit or the city council work. So right now I am working with young communities, organizing to vote, to elect progressive-minded people, and it really just all meshes well together. Before that, I think you mentioned in the bio, I worked with AANHPI. It's a big old acronym, but you know, you do it on purpose because you want to be inclusive of communities. It's Asian American, Native Hawaiian, Pacific Islander. And that, for example, is important to me because sometimes, like even I'm half Mexican, with Mexican and Latinos, sometimes people are like, okay, everyone that's Latino is Mexican. So you don't really start to realize the nuances of like Guatemalan and, you know, the different aspects of Latin culture. And it's the same with Asian Americans. So I do a lot of work and, you know, trying to break down barriers for communities and all the nonprofits that I've worked with.
Oh, that's really cool.
What would you say is your biggest strength that you provide in organized groups?
Definitely empathy and like listening. So I think, you know, coming into my introvertedness, I was like, you know, we live in such an extroverted world, but how can I stay true to myself in the work that I do, you know, because I mean, you want to be pulled in different ways and it's hard to stay true, you know? And so when I was campaigning, I was going to go out. I was like, okay, like I have my platform of like things I'm going to tell people. But when it came down to it, I was really listening. Like people wanted to be heard. People wanted to talk to me as someone who was potentially going to represent them, you know? And so I was like pretty excited about that. I was like, okay, I'm good at listening. I'm good at, you know, empathizing. And so I feel good about that. I feel good that I'm able to represent in that way.
Well, and like you said earlier, it's like I knew that this was bigger than me, right? It's not just what you want. It's like, what does my community want? And I like that you're willing to listen and take that into account. That's fantastic.
And it's like being their voice too.
Yes.
You know, and I think that's really important, is to be able to listen to the needs of others and be able to speak for them.
Yep.
Do you have any previous experiences growing up that you could give credit towards having helped create or build your current skills?
I had a rough childhood, and I think, you know, to be able to overcome that, you look for the strengths in that. And so when I think about that, it really is the empathy side of it, you know, the side of caring and side of, you know, not wanting someone else to go through what you went through. It's such a millennial of me, but I'm like, think of this meme that I just read recently. I was like, oh my gosh, this is perfect, because it was talking about, you know, whatever you're going through is becoming the survival guide for someone else. And I was like, that is so perfect.
Oh, that's cool.
So I think about that. I think about, you know, what we overcame and how we're able to like talk to others about it. You guys are going to make me cry.
I know.
Yeah, we love to cry on this podcast. How you spoke on the fact that you want to be true to yourself. And what are things that you do, whether it's daily, on a regular basis, to keep yourself grounded and like aligned with like your values and with who you are?
A lot of alone time, but I think it's really taking time to process, because I'm also like a very processing type of person. Like, if you tune in to the city council meetings, which hardly people do, but you should check it out once in a while. I don't talk very often. Like, I'm not up there, you know, saying something every opportunity I get. And I think it's mainly because like I go home and I take the time to process and to be able to like make decisions, or to be able to like recognize I mean, not everyone's going to be happy with the decisions you make, but to be able to take all of these things into consideration. So I think I take time to process. I think take time to self-care, and to give myself that spaciousness,
Mm-hmm. Well, and that's important. I feel like the last thing you want for city council members to make these brash decisions, and they want to, I feel like that's really nice that you recognize that this is how I'm wired. I like to think and process and then come back with an answer. I feel like that's really good.
Mm-hmm. How would you explain the importance of utilizing the strength and having a voice?
How would I explain it? I think, going back to like the introvertedness, I want to encourage that, encourage like people to be themselves. And I'm still like working on like overcoming that and, being, what do you call it when you're on both sides?
Introverted, extrovert?
Yeah.
Or extroverted,
I know
introvert?
there's a word for it, but when it comes time to like, okay, I'm in the public, or I get invited to to speak for youth and that kind of thing. Like I want to emphasize to them that, I am an introvert, but I'm here because I want to talk to you about, stepping into whatever it is that you are. And so I don't know. I hold a lot of space of like non-judgment around me, and I want to be able to create that aura around me. And so, when it comes to talking to groups, like instead of standing on the stage, I usually ask people, like, can we sit in a circle and like get a chair and like have a conversation? And I think like people start to realize like, oh, you can be an elected, official, but you can be yourself too. And so like, I really try to encourage that with young people and younger people, and even amongst my peers, is like, it doesn't have to be, what we have been like socially constructed to be as professional or is what we look like. I'll show up in my messy bun to meetings. Someone actually like called me out on it, not in a bad way, but they're like, I love how you're yourself with your messy hair. And I was like, well,
you're like, thanks, I think.
I know, exactly. So I mean, showing up in every way possible is like who I am, I think I try and emphasize that, with people. And then on top of that, talking them through, just step into yourself, because people like need to hear our stories.
Well, what are some ways that you encourage, those that you speak to or even those you're in contact with to get involved in the community? Like, what are a few examples of ways that like people get, like me, like how could I start getting involved in Riverbank in the city and with the council members, or what are good ways to get involved in the community?
Yes. Oh my gosh, there's so many different ways. I think that's what's exciting, but also it's not well known. So it's like, it's super understandable to like want to be involved, but you're like, well, I don't know how. So city council members should be super accessible, especially in smaller cities. Like, again, when I was campaigning, I was like going around to my district, because Riverbank is split in 4 districts. So I'm in District 2, and that's mainly who I represent. So I basically focused on that area of walking around and talking to the neighbors. And that's exactly how I'd introduce myself. I'm like, hey, like, I'm your neighbor. I'm running for office. Like, do you have a minute to talk? And so, yeah, again, in smaller cities, they should be super accessible. You go to website, you should be able to call and text, to be honest. It's easy as that. But I mean, on the other hand, if you want to actually start getting involved, there's actual like commissions and committees at different levels. This year's 100-year anniversary, 100th birthday of Riverbank, and cool. There's a year-long celebration going on, and there's an actual committee that's like in charge of what are we going to do to celebrate. We hosted a picnic and car show recently, and there was like a fair a few weeks ago. And I mean, that's just people, you can go in there and, you can be a part of it, and you can tell them like, this is what I think we should do. And besides that, I mean, there's different projects like Love Riverbank that happens, which I happen to be in charge of. So if you know,
like, shout out to Love Riverbank,
call me. But I mean, there's different ways. I think a good starting point is to call the city directly and like let them know, like, I'm interested in this. Can I talk to my city council member? Or What can I do to get involved? It really should be that simple.
I love that, because I think sometimes we get overwhelmed with, I'm just a normal person, I can't have an effect. But like you're saying, things are listed publicly. Like you can even just going to events, I feel like helps like build that sense of community. Like, oh, I'm a part of this. Like that's, and then it makes you want to be more motivated to help and to dive in and see where we're spending our money. You know, I think that's really cool.
What would you say are some of the obstacles that you have or currently face in your profession?
Honestly, it's like even what we look like, right? I think like, I'm sure you understand, like as like business owners and, you know, you're public facing too, like people don't take you seriously. You know, you kind of have to like prove yourself. And honestly, like that's one of the main reasons why I got my bachelor's and went to get on my master's, was like, if I'm gonna be involved, like for some reason, I feel like I need this credibility. And so, what we look like, you know, and like trying to be ourselves and still trying to have a seat at the table and still trying to, you know, voice your opinion when, you know, you're like, gosh, like that imposter syndrome starts to set in. I deal with it every day. And so, I mean that, and I think that's basically covers all of it, right? Because then when it comes time to speak, or when it comes time to like volunteer for certain things, like you're probably not the first person that people are going to go to just because like of what you look like. During the campaign, I would get comments like, oh, you know, is she even old enough? Like, does she even have kids? Did she even graduate? I was like, I don't have to have kids to like, you know, be, I don't know what. And then, like facing these things and even people saying like, well, like she's nice, but you know, what else? And it's like, well, let's have a conversation, you know, let's talk about, you know, why I feel like, you know, I had to do X, Y, and Z just to even run and be, you know, I don't know,
like a candidate
qualified.
Even,
Exactly. Yeah. So it's an everyday struggle, but you know.
Well, I love that you say you're fighting that imposter syndrome even still, right? You're already like attaining goals and making things happen. And yet sometimes we still question, and that's completely okay. And I feel like even for me, I deal with that as well. Like you said, just like being in business and working with people. And I've had to start like telling myself, like, you could be that girl though. Like, even if you don't feel like it, like you don't feel like a boss or like you deserve to have a voice, it's like, no, you do. Yep. You got to find that worth within you and turn that on and say, maybe I can have an impact. But I think that's really good that you mentioned that, because I feel like being in tune with yourself and hyping yourself up is super important no matter what job, you know, you're doing.
That daily pep talk. Yes.
What are some things that you do on a daily to keep yourself high energy and feeling like putting that imposter syndrome at bay?
I am not high energy, but I think like, I was like, I accepted that. I'm just like a low key, super like, I make fun of myself. I'm like, I'm a super dry person, but I think that's what, for me, that's what keeps me going, you know, from like podcast recording to, you know, a working lunch meeting to agenda prep for our city council meeting tomorrow. They'll see my day today. But I think to, again, take like the spaciousness to be able to do that. To be honest, like I love getting dressed up. I love like, you know, taking the time to do that and like make myself feel good. And then usually I'll exercise. So like I'll weightlift-ish. I've been doing jujitsu for about 5.5 years. So I'll do that. And treat myself, you know, with food, the good and the bad, you know, you got to balance both. Yeah. But finding things like will ground me and that will, you know, make me feel good when I'm between like using literally like all my energy when it comes to like speaking to people, because I think I want to be fully present with people to be able to, you know, do that.
Yeah, I love that advice.
And I like that you mentioned that, because for me, my self-sabotaging voice is a perfectionist.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's what I'm constantly having to battle. And so if I don't think that I'm being perfect, then I'm like, okay, then I'm not doing it or I'm not going to do well. But I think the switch for me is instead of focusing on being perfect, it's being deliberate.
Yes.
Right? What are my intentions? What am I trying to do with that? And that has kind of like what I'm hearing you say is like, no, you're having a voice for other people, like you're present, everything that you're doing is with good intent, whether that voice is there or not, it's just being able to focus on that instead.
Yeah, I mean, even saying no to some things, I'm like, that was the hardest thing for me. You said it so well. Like, I want to say yes all the time. And when I say yes, I want to show up 150%, and I started realizing that, especially when I took on council, I was like, I can't do that. Like, I can't, and it feels horrible disappointing people, feeling like you're disappointing people, but, wanting to be intentional with what you show up with is more important to me, having that quality of life personally, but then also, showing up as this like person, you put on with the public that you are authentic and that this is like who they can expect from you too. It's a balance of all of that.
Well, and there's so much power in a no. And I feel like for me, I'm working on that and trying to realize that as well. It's like a constant battle for me, but realizing there's power in a pause, like power when I take a minute and be like, hey, I need to ground myself, figure out what I like, where I'm going. But there's also so much power in a no. And I feel like for me, I've had to rewire what that looks like. It's like, no doesn't mean I'm letting someone down. It means I'm showing up for myself. It's like I'm defending Ariana and setting a boundary. Like, and maybe it's not no forever. Like, no, not today, but I can do it later. It's hard because I'm a little bit of a perfectionist like Joanne, where I want to, like you said, show up for everyone. I want to say yes. I don't want to miss an opportunity. Yeah. But in reality, like you'll just run yourself ragged, So I think that's really important.
Is there any advice that you would give to your younger self if you could?
Okay. I would give a lot of advice to her. And first of all, calm down. You don't have to say yes to everything. We were just talking about that. I guess I would tell her that it's all going to work out, I guess, in general, because I had these different ideas through my 20s, that, I had to be this certain person, that I needed to show up a certain way. And that was partially being okay with being introverted and being low energy we were talking about. But yeah, I would tell her that it's going to work out. There was a lot of chaos, growing up, a lot of trauma. And some days, it's hard to come out of it. And you see people who can't, and I'm lucky that I was able to do that, within myself, and then start to find a support system to help me through it. So I would just reassure her. Yeah.
That's good. Yeah. Do you have any personal goals or projects that you're currently working on?
Oh my gosh. Yes.
That you can share.
There's a lot. I mean, with City Council itself, every city, every county got a bucket of money from the federal government. I'm sure you've heard of it, the American Rescue Act funds. And they're basically flexible money, and that we can figure out what we want to do with it. And part of that we're using to install a lot of solar through the city, and in parts of the city that are, less affluent, which is pretty exciting because that means we're going to build up their parks and stuff. So we're trying to figure out what to do with the rest of that money. I think it's almost $7 million that was received directly to the city. And the other part of it is addressing homelessness. Riverbank does not have a large population of people dealing with it, but we want to be proactive. And that was important to me. It's being proactive about, with growth comes negative things too. And so we want to make sure that people are taken care of and have a place to go when, if that happens. And so outside of that, it's the community work. So I mentioned Love Riverbank. I said no to it last year. That was hard, but that was because I wanted to take the time this year to develop a committee that could support me. And so I'm doing all of that this year, and people can get involved with that. I really want people to get involved with that, to come support, to host it in 2023. Besides that, there's a lot of meetings, and I would love like for people to reach out to me. There's a lot of meetings that happen about economic development and what it looks for our communities. Like, but when you go to these meetings, you don't see people who look like our communities. And so, you know, we need people to get involved and to come to those meetings and to make their voice heard. There's what else? More to come, I guess. I mean, I just want to be super available for people because I definitely am working on a whole bunch of different things. Even on the political side, my term ends in 2024, so I have a 4-year term. I still have a couple years, but there's a lot of people who are running who we want to support and to represent us at every level, and I'm supporting on campaigns here and there too. So it'd be great for people to get involved in that.
And where can people look to see what you're up to? Like, is that something you post on like the city council site, or is it a personal area? Where would we go, like, if we wanted to get involved in Riverbank?
So our website, the City Riverbank website page is not updated too well. So I would say go to there to get contact information, to get in touch directly. We'll work on that. But the other part of it is honestly like social media. I mean, it's been such a powerful tool through my campaign and now through, you know, my term. I'm not like I'm not updating absolutely everything on there, but I'm super available to connect with people. And I try to post some things. For example, I'm on the board of director for the Boys and Girls Club for Stanislaus County, and that's similar. So we manage the organization's funds and what it'll look like for the county. And it's pretty exciting to be involved in that with a good organization.
Well, it's fantastic. And what's your handle for your council Instagram?
I changed it a little bit. I think it's at Council Rachel H, Rachel. Yeah.
And we'll put a link on the podcast description too, if you guys want to hear that. So why do you think it's important for a woman of color to be involved in the government, even community-wise? And what impact does it have on that upcoming population that's able to see someone that looks like you be on that board?
I actually love this question because I think, so in the Valley, it looks a certain way, right? It's a little more conservative. It's a little more, it looks different. So I'm used to being very PC, you know, in the Valley, but I'm being very intentional about flexing and working on that progressive muscle. And honestly, like, it's not, I wouldn't say like it's partisan because there are things that deal with, again, what we look like, our rights, what's important to us. And so, I mean, that being said, we're not represented when it comes to leadership. And so when we're not seeing ourselves at the table, you know, our perspectives aren't at the table either. I mean, you know, this old white man can look, you know, can be progressive minded and all of that, but it only takes people so far, you know, when you don't have that lived experience, when you don't have, you know, that connection to the community. I always think about my campaign and when I was like walking around, talking to people. I grew up speaking Spanish. I don't look like it, but, and it's not that great, but still, like, when I would walk up to the door and I'd realize like, oh, they speak Spanish, like, you know, I'll start speaking to them in Spanish. There's automatically that sense of comfort. And they're like, oh my gosh, like, I'm going to go get my comadre to sign for you, you know, like, I have my comadre here, like, that'll support you too. And then they start asking you about immigration, and they start asking about all these things that, you know, don't directly have to do with council, but when they see, you know, that you represent their community, that, you know, you're like them, they are more comfortable, and like, they want to know answers and they want to be involved. And I mean, I have so many stories of specifically like older Mexican men or young women who look like me and they want to get involved, or they, you know, are looking for this job, but they haven't been able to ask anybody. So just even representation matters, you know, and even if you have no idea what a city council person does, like, you know, that you could go to them and that they're in a position of power, honestly, and that they could support you through different processes and to get involved. So it's powerful and it's exciting, and I think it does inspire other people, to want to be involved and run. So that's my goal. Like, I don't want to be front facing anymore, but I want to bring other people in.
I love that. And then there is that person inside of us that's like, oh, she did it, I could do it. I feel like that's huge. And it's that sense of security and comfort that comes with knowing like, hey, she's representing me and my ideals. Like, I feel like that's really, really powerful. Like, that's cool. How do you manage your work-life balance right now? Because you have a lot of your hands in a lot of different pots, and, your nonprofit, council, your personal stuff. It's like, what are methods you take to make sure that you feel like in balance and okay with what you're doing?
I feel like it's more of a juggling act. Like, it's hard to find a balance. But in that juggling act, I do have self-care. I do have the time to step away and to say no to certain things because I gotta like recuperate and to re-energize. But being mindful of like my schedule and like what works for me. Like, for me, I have to have a calendar, like, and I have to schedule in lunches because I'll forget, and I have to and making it a priority to have that time to feed myself, like feed my soul, and to re-energize. Working in nonprofit in the community, I kind of consider community council a little separate, but community council, nonprofit, and I do help with like other things. Like, I help wherever it's needed. Like, if someone needs help with their social media management, then I'll go and like, yes, I'll do it for you. But again, to prioritize myself and to honestly, like, I tell people too, I'm like, can you remind me to hydrate? Like, I have like this friend and she's always like, you better hydrate. And then she'll like message me through the day. It's pretty funny.
That's really cute.
But to have those accountability buddies, to support you with it, because I know I need it. And to honestly, like, I'm not afraid to like reach out to like other women, in my circles, like even in my like outer circle. So like, you expect a text from me once in a while now that we're connected, but to have time, to have girl time, to, refresh and to step away from everything. All of it.
Oh, that's awesome.
That's good. So I don't want to ask you to pick a favorite, but of all of the clubs and organizations that you've worked in, which did you enjoy most?
My gosh. I worked for some time, because I love all of them, but I worked for some time with United Way of Stanislaus County. And I think the biggest part of it was the growth that I saw in myself there. That and also when there's a difference between leadership and management, right? Like when you have managers who are leaders and like uplift you to, be comfortable in making decisions and be comfortable in like having a voice, like that was the most exciting for me. So I was like working closely with the CEO and with other directors, with the board of directors, which is huge in nonprofits, and to be able to like step into that, I did at the time was exciting. So I think that's like my favorite experience in my nonprofit journey.
That's cool. It's amazing. All right.
Well, thank you, Rachel, for taking time out of your schedule and joining us.
Of course, it was fun. I love connecting, so I'm excited.
No, that's perfect. And again, reach out to Rachel at Council Rachel H. Perfect. On Instagram or even on the Riverbank site if you want to start getting involved.
Yes.
All right. Thank you. Thank you for listening to Awaken Your Ego, a podcast that explores biohacking and self-discovery. We hope you follow us on Instagram and Facebook to stay up to date on what we're working on in your area.